Broadcasting from the Woodpeckers Studio in the great state of New Hampshire, welcome to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast, where we discuss all things related to hiking and search and rescue in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Here are your hosts, Mike and Stump.
We rolling?
Do it live. Do it live. Here we go. All right. So, Matt, I have a serious question for Matt on the opener here. I was just watching a video that you put out on TikTok, and I have many questions. So, Stomp, this guy put out a video, like an instructional video of how he makes his coffee, and it was interesting. But I want to understand, Matt. So, you basically go outside in your morning coffee. You go outside, you fill a cup up with snow because you're in Vermont. You can do that, and then you pour hot coffee in the snow, and then from there you put a little bit more snow on top, and then you pour. It's just soda water, or is it lemon seltzer?
It's usually citrus flavored soda water, whatever I have on hand. Grapefruit, lemon, lime. But yeah, soda water, just seltzer water.
Is that a thing? Is that something you picked up in hiking, or is that something you invented in Vermont?
I believe it. Espresso with soda water is an Italian drink to some extent. I just trashed it up by throwing snow in it and soda water, just like grocery store soda water on top.
All right, so that makes sense because I'm Irish, so I wouldn't understand the thing. So I saw that and I was like, wow, that's a crazy drink. So I am going to attempt to make one of those at some point in the next couple of days.
It's delicious. I love it.
Yeah. It didn't look horrible, but I'm gonna check it out. But all right, so Matt, we'll introduce you in a few minutes, but hop in if anything comes up that you wanna chime in on. But Stomp,
yo.
The biggest thing I wanted to open the show with is your trail name has been compromised, and there's a lot of buzz on the Instagram around the fact that Mark basically just exposed your trail name. So do you want to explain yourself?
He outed me, huh?
Or he outed you on your real name, not your trail name.
Correct. Yeah, it's funny when it happened. He did it a couple times, and at the time I'm thinking to myself, real fast, like, I can edit that out, and then regardless of whether I can edit it or not, I don't want to interrupt him at the moment because he was on such a roll. I felt like that if I interrupted him, it just would have taken away the steam and the emotion of what he was talking about at the time. And when I went back to edit,
he was so passionate.
Oh, what was that?
He was so passionate.
Oh, hell yeah. He was a great guest. So I didn't want to interrupt it. And then I was thinking to myself, okay, I can put like a bleep or I can put like a duck quack over every time they say my name. You know what I mean? But that's just, it wasn't going to work. So I just let it go. So yeah, the name's out there, which is fine. Nobody knows my last name. I'm sure some Reddit sleuths will figure it out, but
it's weird because when before we started the show, I sort of knew Stomp was something you used for some of your DJ stuff, but I never called you that. I always called you your real name. So
now everybody calls me Stomp.
Yeah, now it's weird to go back to Jamie. So
yeah, it's wicked cool.
It's going to be Stomp moving forward. But anyway, I got some questions about it. So just so that everyone's clear, when Mark was referencing Jamie and how great of a guy he was, like, first of all, he's wrong about that. But second of all, that's Stomp. Jamie, Stomp, Jamie. So
yes. I'll be curious to see if anybody figures out my real name, but it may very well be Magnuson from Greenland, because that's where I'm from. Yeah. I came across the Great Ocean in a wicker basket full of fleece, and last name's Magnuson.
Fleece or fleas?
Well, it could have been a little both.
Yeah, I think it probably was. So anyway, do you want to give a COVID update, Stomp?
COVID? Dude, I do not have COVID. Let's hear your COVID update.
You can hear it in his voice. He's a little sick.
No, listen.
He doesn't have COVID.
Remember the old flu from the good old days? It took a senior gap year last year.
Years ago.
Yeah, it's back this year, and I got it with my wife. It was weird. I got it last Thursday. We're recording what is today, Monday? I got it Thursday morning. I'm at the gas station, and I look on the schedule for the snowmobile guiding, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not on there. So I call the manager, and he's like, dude, I got COVID. I'm like, shit. So that's why I'm not feeling so hot. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'm not feeling so great. So I go home. 2 hours later, I have 101 fever for 3 days straight. It broke yesterday. And it's all bronchial. It's all bronchial. You can hear it. Now my wife has it. She's been out of work delivering the mail. But several tests later, negative. You know, it is what it is. It's just a good old flu. Count me lucky.
Did you test anally?
No. No, have you heard about that?
Try it, though.
They're pulling that stuff on U.S. diplomats, man. I can't believe that.
No idea.
So I've got a bidet that we'll talk about later, I'm sure. That
Oh, yeah.
Dude, you're a conspiracy theorist. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, exactly.
How's your COVID?
All right, so...
Do you still have your nagging cough?
Well, it's not great, man. I got a persistent cough. The only thing that's persistent about me is my cough. Other than that, I just give up on everything. But so I'm trying to mute myself, but you may hear me break into a cough once or twice on the show. So I'll try to behave, but it is hard.
I can edit those out.
But I'm on the mend. So
Good, you look better. Color's better.
yeah, I got a haircut, so that helps too. But I think before a couple of things stomp. So just a warning for you. Tonight we're going to do search and rescue news, but we're going to have a bunch of snowmobile accident news. So as we're editing this show, I want you to pull some like car crash drops to put into it. So you got to keep an eye on that.
Got it. On it.
But a couple of updates I have is I just want to remind everybody, if you can give us a 5-star review, that would be great. I don't know why, but I have it in my head that like the more reviews we have, the higher up we'll get on Apple Podcast rating. So I think we picked up like 4 or 5 reviews. If you could just add 5-star reviews on Apple, that would be great. And then over to you, Stomp, for sponsors and coffee talk.
Yes, we have a few donations. Sarah without an H donated 3. Brandon from Lawtown, that must be Lawrence, Mass, I'm assuming, donated 5.
Yep.
Renee, do you know this person?
Renee?
No, Brandon from Lawtown.
Oh, no, I don't.
Okay, because I was wondering if it was somebody I knew from the boxing arena back then, but I'm not even sure. Renee B donated 2, and she had a lot of nice stuff to say. You can see her post on the Instagram page, Renee B. At Jilly Bank donated 3, and then Shandy, another great volunteer from Upper Valley Wilderness, I believe, right? Medical response team. Thank you for donating 7 coffees. That's very generous. And she showed up as someone, but we know it's her. So thank you, Shandy. And
and I got to reach out to Jill because I want to see if I can get her and Carter. So that's Jill and Carter.
Got it. Yeah,
the prolific hikers. So I got to reach out to her to see if we can get them on at some point.
Oh, that'd be great. A special thanks to our sponsor at Reckless Brewing, where you'll enjoy the best food, craft beer, and fun just 15 minutes from Franconia Notch. Many 4,000 footers in less than 10 minutes from the 5 corners. I spent some time with them last weekend, just talking about their future plans and stuff like that. It was really neat. And they gave us a little gift that we're going to use a little later tonight for history.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then did you want to throw out anything about the hiking pole study?
Oh, yes. What we're going to do, Andy Cannon from Reckless put together a very simple Google Docs questionnaire with a simple single leg stance balance test. And what we're going to do is post the links to both of these, and we'll probably put the videos up on Facebook and Instagram for you to participate. And what we're trying to figure out is if there is any difference between use of poles, balance, falls, things like that. So it's going to be really interesting. So in the show notes this week, keep a lookout for the links for the balance test for poles and the questionnaire.
Awesome. Anything else before I do the show intro here, Snop?
I think we are good.
All right, so welcome to this Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast. Tonight we're joined by our friend Matt, who is going to talk about thru-hiking. So we've touched on thru-hiking a little bit, but we're going to do a deep dive tonight. So we are quickly approaching March, which is when thousands of thru-hikers set out on the trail to experience the joys and misery of southern Georgia in the late winter on the Appalachian Trail. So Matt is going to join us because he's an experienced thru-hiker, having hiked the Appalachian Trail and the Long Trail. He's also going to talk a little bit about trail magic and his plans to hike the PCT later this year. He'll also share some stories about overcoming serious challenges and struggles to maintain a balanced and happy life. You're happy, right, Matt?
Mostly, yeah.
Well, okay, good. So Matt, he's also, some people may know him by his trail name Pawsey, but we'll talk about that in a little while. But he lives in Vermont. He's got a very fun social media presence that's kept me quite entertained for the last year or so. So we're excited to have him sit down with us to teach us all about long distance hiking. Later in the show, we're going to do a segment about Camp Stark, which was a World War II prisoner of war camp in New Hampshire, which I actually didn't even know about. So thumbs up to Stomp for finding out about this. And then we'll close out the show with some recent search and rescue news, which will mostly be about snowmobile crashes. So I'm Mike.
And I'm Stomp Magnuson from Greenland. Let's get started.
All right. So shouldn't you be saying that with a Greenland accent? What is a Greenland accent? I don't even know.
It's probably Inuit, right?
You got to be like that guy from Frozen, the movie, you know, the store owner. I can't do it, so we'll just move on. All right, so beer talk here. So, Stomp, what are you drinking tonight? Anything? Robitussin?
Just coffee. Yeah, coffee to keep me alive. That's it. What you got rolling?
I am drinking something called Liberty Call by Stellwagen Beer Company. So I had something else from Stellwagen the other day, and the local place that I buy beer from had a whole selection, so I grabbed a couple of different IPAs. So it's not bad. It's a little like smoother than a lot of the IPAs I've been drinking lately, which I appreciate because I'm kind of a big pussy when it comes to beer. Yeah. What do you got, Matt?
Actually, I started drinking beer again. No, I have a Lagunitas non-alcoholic IPA tonight.
Holy shit. So when you said that, Matt, the first thing I talked about, I was like, oh my God, maybe this dude's a former alcoholic and like I pressured him into drinking a beer and it's going to ruin his life.
That's awesome.
No, I'm celebrating actually 18 months sober and doing it with a non-alcoholic beer.
Awesome. Now, is the sober, so when I stopped drinking beer for like 10 years or so, and it was mostly just like a couple of things. Like I was gaining weight, and then number two, I was sort of like, I want to sort of live a disciplined life, and I just felt better when I wasn't drinking, but I have gone back to it. But I don't know, is it 18 months like sober, yay, or is it 18 months like I'm just doing a health kick thing?
Well, altogether, it's somewhere like 3 or 4 years. I've been back and forth, but this time it's just straight up. Just I'm done. I can't live with alcohol, so I'm over it.
Got it.
Yeah, but I'm Vermont sober.
Okay, got it. That makes sense. So, stick to it though. Stick to it. If you feel better not drinking, then that's the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
All right, awesome. So, Stomp, any recent hikes for you?
No, man. I've been laid up, so I got nothing. Having some weird dreams too, man. I was dreaming about hiking and snowmobiling and stuff like that. And I was binging. I'm binging Yellowstone on the couch for the last 3 or 4 days, so I was having this weird hybrid dream of snowmobiling and Yellowstone. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
I think it might be a new show called Yellow Snow.
Oh, boy. Put the drop in there. So,
I'll drink to that.
Yes.
Oh.
So no hiking for you, no hiking for me either. I am I'm getting out next weekend though. I did do a little bit of a hike. We had a storm down here in Massachusetts, and I just left my house and I did like a 4-mile hike in the woods around my house, which was nice. There was nobody around because it was like blizzard conditions. But heading back up north next weekend. I don't know where I'm hiking, but
you guys
I'm going out for
got
sure.
the worst of it. We got nothing up here. I mean, it was like a couple inches maybe. And I'm talking Waterville Valley area, but even north towards Bartlett, I think it was sort of panned out.
Are you guys expecting anything this coming weekend?
14 inches. Based upon my radar, Hell yeah. It's like,
Yeah, we're looking at like 10 to 15.
yeah, it's like 2 days, 7 and 7 for this region. So we'll see if that works out, but that'll be a dumping.
Yeah. Even better if you're getting some snow, because I definitely will be happy to break trail up there, but I'm getting up north for sure. But in Massachusetts, we had, where I'm on the New Hampshire border, we got maybe about a foot, a little over a foot, but there was like sections down by the Cape and the South Shore that got like 2 feet of snow. So they're clearing out pretty heavily.
Yeah.
What
about you, Matt? Any recent hikes? I know you're always out. I see on social media you're always cruising locally.
Yeah, I try to make my hikes just, my errands that I have to run across town or something like that. So nothing above like 2 or 3 miles since snow started falling, because I do not enjoy walking through the snow.
Got it. Now, I don't know how much you pay attention to this stuff. Like, we'll get into this in a little while, but my impression is like you haven't been in New England in a long time, and you're in Vermont, so you might be a little bit away from like the crazy peak bagger list hiking shit that we do in New Hampshire. But do you do any of that stuff, or do you not care?
I've never actually cared about the peak bagging until recently. I just started actually getting interested in it, and I learned that getting up to like Franconia Ridge, for example, when there's 8 feet of snow is actually easier because you don't have to climb over all the rocks and everything. So
yep.
I definitely want to get out there and bag those peaks in the winter at some point.
Cool. Yeah. Well, you'll if the bug bites you, feel free to hit me up anytime. I'm a little bit of a maniac when it comes to the list and the peak bag and stuff. So.
Oh, really? This is good to know.
Yeah, exactly. But awesome. So you ready? We're going to move into the Matt segment. You ready for this?
Yeah.
It's time for SLASR's Guest of the Week. Very cool. Very cool.
Awesome. Yeah. So I wanted to start off. So we wanted to have Matt on. I have been following him on TikTok, believe it or not, is the app where I think you're most active. And I wanted to have you on to give a little bit of your perspective about through hiking. I think wouldn't say I know you, but I think over the last year and a half or so, just sort of catching 1-minute videos, you sort of pick up on things about people. And I was like, this would be a really good guy to have to talk about through hiking. And we've touched on through hiking a little bit, but we haven't done a deep dive on it. So tonight I wanted to do a little bit of a deep dive. But before I hand it over to you, Matt, I wanted to just sort of give you my perspective about how I've sort of come to not really know you, but like I've just been aware of you. Is like when COVID hit in March of 2020, there was like 3 things that I think everybody started doing. One of which was everybody watched Tiger King. So that was the big thing. And then a bunch of like older adults started getting into TikTok. So that was number 2. And then number 3 was obviously like the whole COVID protocol stuff. But we were, my whole family, like we started getting into TikTok. And at first it was like this sort of funny, goofy thing. Like we were all like, oh, we're too old for TikTok, blah, 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 blah. But over time, like this algorithm on TikTok is like, it's unbelievable, because like I started like slowly but surely looking at hiking, different hiking videos. And I actually, before I even started really watching TikTok that much, I put up I have a stupid account called Patriot Mask, if you want to find me on TikTok. I put up like one video of the plane crash site on Mount Success. I don't know, when you did the thru hike, did you do the detour to check out the plane crash, Matt?
I didn't do it when I did my thru hike, but I've done it since.
Got it. Yeah. So I did like one video on TikTok, and it had that like spooky music behind it that you would know it if you heard it.
I think I followed you on that one.
Yeah. Could be that could be it. And I got like, I don't know, like 500,000 views or something like that. So for me, it was like this funny thing where my kids were like, oh, all these influencers, whatever. And I was like, yeah, matter of fact, I got a couple thousand followers now, and I got a video with 500,000 views, whatever. So it was kind of a fun thing. But over time, the algorithm starts sort of picking up on what you like and what you see. So I can't think of a time where I've gone on TikTok where there was a little bit of a period where you went dark for about a month or 2. I think you were switching jobs, and we'll talk about that. But most of the time, you're always like, you're on there when I get on there. And I've sort of moved away from Facebook and Instagram as much as I can, but I haven't really cut the cord on TikTok. So I usually, before I go to bed, I'll watch for like 20 minutes or a half hour, and you're always on there. And I think your videos are fun, entertaining, and engaging. And, you got what, like 3 minutes max? Most of the time, your videos are like 30-second stops. So.
Yep. Yeah. I try to keep it short and fun.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think before I was into TikTok, and I don't really follow too many other hikers, but like I would like follow Dixie on YouTube or Darwin or New Hampshire Hiker or Braids. They're like the social media people on YouTube. But they're all great. And, I just figured that, it would be interesting to have you on. You've got a lot of cool sort of hacks about gear that you've thrown up over time. You've got a really good perspective, I think, about sort of a Zen way of looking at hiking. So that's why I wanted to have you on.
I'm in. That all works for me. And thank you for finding my TikToks entertaining. I mostly just do them to entertain myself.
No, it's cool. But I guess maybe to start off with, do you want to sort of give your origin story, particularly about like what little bit about your background, and then a little bit about how you started getting into hiking, maybe up until the point where you decided that you wanted to hike the AT?
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in New Jersey. My dad got us into scouting when we were young. Really loved he loved hiking, not necessarily backpacking. We did a lot of camping and day hiking and stuff like that. I never really enjoyed it that much. We would go out, and I learned later on that I didn't enjoy the social part of it, but I'll get into that a whole bunch later on. So yeah, we would go up to Sunfish Pond right up there on the Appalachian Trail, and it's not far out of Delaware Water Gap, so New Jersey, Pennsylvania area. And my dad would take us up there, and we'd go out for that day hike, come back, and just camp down at Worthington State Forest. And while we were out there, we would encounter thru-hikers and talk to them, and ask them all the classic questions, where are you going? Where did you start? How long is this taking? All that kind of stuff. But I never really was super interested in the Appalachian Trail growing up. I wasn't really super interested in hiking. I was not a very active kid. I got into football because I was a heavy, lineman, but that's about the extent of my athleticism as a young person. Later on in my life, as I got older, after high school, moved to Austin, Texas. I was bartending in Austin. I had lost some weight and started getting nostalgic about the idea of like getting out and doing something, walking. Started walking to and from work 4 miles every day, and realizing that I really enjoyed that part of exercise and daily activity. So started looking back and getting back into hiking.
How was in Texas? Did you have a lot of options just from like, obviously walking from work was easy, but did they have traditional trails like we would think of up here in the Northeast?
No. So Texas has the Lone Star Trail. The Lone Star Trail is very flat. There's not a lot to it. In fact, I've never walked it. I've only read comments about it on Gut Hook and Reddit and things like that. There's a lot of, day hiking. There's a lot of like short hikes. There's one place called Enchanted Rock in Central Texas in Fredericksburg. That place is amazing. It's almost like a smaller version of Half Dome in Yosemite, if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
Large rock you can hike up to the top of, and there's a lot of hiking trails around it and everything, but there's not a whole huge hike. It's like LA hiking in
very
Austin.
Flat state.
Got it. So you're working in Texas, and then was it did you have like a life-changing epiphany, or was it just slowly over time you said, I want to get back into getting up north and changing things?
Oh yeah. So no, when I was in Texas, I was 400 pounds. My roommate at the time came home, and she was talking about this diet, this ketogenic diet that, I didn't really know too much about. I hadn't done any studies or anything on the ketogenic diet. I just did it out of solidarity with her. I wasn't even interested in losing weight at that point in my life. But I did that out of solidarity with her. The first month I lost like 30 pounds and it just took off from there. I enjoyed, losing the weight. I enjoyed the way that I felt. And, after I lost all that weight, I started getting more active. I started getting out and walking and, really, really started to, get out there and do my thing.
Got it. And then at what point did you sort of feel like you wanted to step away from Texas?
So I had to move out of Texas. So the girl I was living with, my best friend who, she had just recently got engaged to her now husband, and I didn't have anywhere to live. So I had to get back to New Jersey to move back in with my parents. And I was trying to figure out ways to get there. And one of the ways that I briefly considered was to walk to New Jersey to go visit my parents, or to go live with my parents. When I was thinking about doing that, the Appalachian Trail came into mind. And I decided that instead of trying to figure out how to road walk to New Jersey and burning my feet up, I would just go and hike the Appalachian Trail.
Right, nice. And then did you have to spend a lot of time sort of prepping and doing the gear research and all that fun stuff, or were you just sort of like, I got to go?
I kind of live a life where I decide to aim first, or shoot first and aim second. I come up with these grand schemes, these great ideas, and then I just figure out how to make it happen from there. So I did very little research on gear. The Appalachian Trail was my first backpacking trip, and I kind of walked into it blindly, and there were a lot of mistakes made. I learned a lot of lessons, but if you're going to be dumb, you got to be tough, right?
Yeah. Now, did you do a traditional like northbound? Did you start at Springer Mountain and go all the way through?
Yeah. My first through hike, I did all the classic stuff, the classic way. I wanted to be traditional about it. I did the stairs and all that kind of stuff too.
Okay. And you started by yourself?
Yeah. The best way to describe it is that we hike alone together, mm-hmm. But yeah, I had nobody else hiking with me. Like with my next hike, I'll be hiking with my wife.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that in a little while, but the gear choices, what did you do? Did you just gear up at like Walmart and Target, or did you have like legit stuff to start with?
I went to REI to get a pack, and I ended up with a pack that was much smaller than most people recommend. I ended up with a 38-liter pack. Okay. And turns out that was perfect for me because I'm a minimalist hiker, but I didn't know it at the time. And I got a tent actually donated to me by an Instagram follower. That tent nice. Turned out to not be the best tent in the world, but it worked. I mean, it was free. It was light. It was a Z-Pax.
That's not bad.
Yeah. Z-Pax Hexamid Solo. The only problem was that it was already ripping on the fly, and I didn't notice it. So I found out one night in a storm by Rufus Shelter that it had a lot of holes in it.
So I just want to backtrack for a second. So these trips take preparation. So you went from Texas straight to Georgia? And
No. So I went from Texas to New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
And I lived at my parents' house for quite a few months before hiking the trail.
Gotcha.
I was working for my dad.
Did you set up all the cache spots and things like that?
No, I didn't really cache anything. I did mostly mail drops when I had to.
Gotcha. Well, that's what I meant. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
But, yeah, I was living with my parents. My dad and my brother own a flooring business, and I had all the money saved to hike the trail, and I cut my fingers off with a table saw.
Oh, yeah, I want to hear about this story. So before you hiked the Appalachian Trail, mm-hmm. you were working for your dad, and you on the table saw you cut your fingers off.
Yes. Yeah. So, last job of the day, I'm there to help my brother out. And he just needs like 2 or 3 boards ripped. So like, no big deal. I'm going to go out and rip these boards, whatever. So I go out there and I get through one board and I blacked everything out. I don't even know what happened, but next thing I know, I'm standing on the front lawn, with 3 fingers missing, and, we're rushing to the hospital.
Did they put them back on?
Yeah, they sent them back on.
Let me see.
Interesting.
Okay. Wow.
That's crazy. Fairly standard.
Yeah, I can't. They're useless. I can't feel them.
Well, that's fine. If you get frostbite, it's no big deal.
The only time that I feel any sensation in them is when they get cold, because there's so much metal in my fingers.
Really?
So it gets really painful when they're cold.
Yeah. How long after you had that accident did you get on the trail?
That happened in October. I got on the trail in March. So 5 months.
Okay. Were you early March or mid March?
Early March, March 4th.
Okay. Do you recommend that early March start?
Oh, that's a hard one. I recommend it if you like being accidentally cold. I was, when I was going out there, my dad was, he was telling me, it's going to be cold. And it's Georgia. It's not going to be that cold, and it got cold. Night 1 was 16 degrees. Night 2 was like 20 degrees. So immediately I had to make decisions to camp at lower elevations just to stay warm because I only had a 32-degree bag.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So you're heading up trail. You got the 38-liter pack. You got a decent tent, but you got some issues. Did you have to stop at? Is it Neil Gap or Neil's Gap? Did you have to stop and really get shaken down there, or were you okay there?
Everybody's it's always gonna be an argument whether it's Neil Gap or Neil's Gap. Just so you know, no matter who you ask, you get a different answer. So I call it Neil Gap just because that's the first time that I saw it was Neil Gap. But yes, I did stop there. I did consider my life choices there, and then eat two entire frozen pizzas.
Yeah. So for the listeners that aren't aware, so Neil or Neil's Gap, this is basically, I think it's about 25 miles into the trail. You've already gone through a couple shelters, and this is where a lot of people who are first timers, like Matt just explained, like he didn't do a lot of planning. He wasn't like previously doing a ton of backpacking aside from when he was younger. A lot of times people sort of, like you said, they reevaluate their life situation 25 miles into the trail, and there's like probably 3 scenarios, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why people end up, walking off, but
yeah.
There's actually a really neat tree right out front that people throw their shoes on when they quit. So it's full of shoes every year.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's one scenario is people they say, I'm not going to have it and I'm done. And then the other 2 scenarios are they just keep going or they get a shakedown. And a lot of times people get rid of the gear that they don't need and they'll get really, geared up there correctly. So,
yeah.
And I heard there's good frozen pizza there too.
It's terrible. It's Red Baron. It's terrible frozen pizza, but it's good when you've only eaten at that point. Because I got moused in Deep Gap, which for anybody listening, that means that a mouse got into my food bag and ate most of my food. So I was eating only oatmeal for 3 days, and it was super, super cold. So it was an exciting time. Really proof that you have to be able to think on your feet if you're going to finish a thru hike, for sure.
Yeah. So you're starting a thru hike. A typical person starts at Springer Mountain in Georgia. You do that first 25, 30 mile section. A lot of people take a couple days, 4 or 5 days to do that. And that is typically where you start to get to know people. And can you talk a little bit about, Matt, this is where you sort of become like, you either become a shelter rat or you become a loner or you start making your trail family. I know that happens more like the first couple 100 miles, but can you talk a little bit about that and like how your experience was?
I mean, you definitely start working your habits into your hike your first couple of days. I mean, it really does decide. I mean, don't get me wrong. I walked into the trail intending to hike 30-mile days, and so my first 4 or 5 days, I just burned through a lot of people and didn't make a lot of friends. But I got to the Smokies at that point and met a lot of really nice people, a lot of really good people, and eventually let the people who I passed in the first few days catch up to me and realize that they were all like solid people as well. All
right. So when you start making your crew in the Smokies, did you, and I'm always curious about this, like, cause I know me, like I do a little bit of I do like section hikes, a little bit of, a couple of days here and there. And I never have any interest in sleeping in a shelter cause I just get freaked out about sleeping near other people that I don't know. And I just have like a 1-person tent and that's how I like to do it. Obviously if my wife was with me, she doesn't hike, that would be different, but like I don't have any interest in getting in the shelters. Did you take that same approach or over time?
I was a straight up shelter rat the entire hike.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, So I slept in a tent on day 2 because it was super cold and I had to camp in a super low elevation. But I don't think I broke my tent out until Pennsylvania after that.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I would have so much anxiety about it because, like, for me, like, and again, my experience is a section, like, for me, I'm thinking, like, all right, what if I don't get there on time and the shelter's all full? Or what if I get there early and there's a couple of girls that come and I'm the creepy guy that's there? Or what if, I snore and I'm bothering people? Like, I have all these like anxieties about like this idea of being in the shelter. Obviously, like if it's pouring rain or something like that and you don't want to set your tent up, that's a different scenario, but like that's not as common. But how did you get over that anxiety about the shelter situation?
I mean, there are a lot of what ifs, but you also have to realize that every single person who sleeps in that shelter has the same what ifs going through their mind. And everybody else snores. As soon as you sleep in there, you realize that everybody else snores. The shelters only are congested when you're walking through, a high traffic area on a weekend. Same thing as hiking, in the whites. You avoid certain trails on certain days. And if you're hiking through a high traffic area, you either speed up or slow down so you're not hitting those shelters on weekends, and that's how you avoid them getting overcrowded.
Got it. And then what was your approach? So typically, for people that aren't aware of thru hiking, typically, and again, this is typical but not written in stone, most of the people that are doing thru hikes are like 5 days on the trail, and then they'll either hit a town or a hostel or something like that to resupply. And a lot of times people will take what's called a zero, or sometimes they call it a Nero. So a zero means you're not doing any hiking. A Nero means like you're doing like 2-3 miles into town and that's it. Like, what was your system, would you say, overall, once you got into a groove?
Oh, when I got into the groove, it was, I'd say probably every 10 days or so I had a Nero or a zero. 0 days are kind of, the best part of hiking. And I always joke that my favorite part of hiking is the not hiking. So we took advantage of zeros whenever we could. Once I got my trail family going and everything. We shelter zeros and, whatever we had to rest up and get whatever we needed for our bodies and, enjoy trail towns when we were there.
Got it. All right. And then another question I have is, eventually you sort of get your water system down, and I want to talk about your trail bidet later, but you get your water system down. Or were you filtering water, or did you do what I know some thru hikers just say, I don't even bother filtering, I just scoop it up and drink it? What was your water system?
My filters, I go with the Catadine Be Free. I don't know if you have used that before. Yeah, it's the one with the super fast flow rate. And when you use something like that, it's just easy to send your water through it anyway, so I just filter by proxy if that's the easiest way to store my water and carry it,
Okay. Got it. And then, so you're in the Smokies, you sort of getting your connection to the trail family. So I want to talk about, there's all different types of blazing, but Stomp, have you ever heard of pink blazing? What pink blazing is?
I have no idea. No.
All right. So blazing, right? So there's yellow blazing, which is when you take a ride into town, I think, or you skip the trail by getting rides. Blue blazing, I think, is where you take like a spur trail, and then pink blazing is when you like meet somebody, like you're hooking up basically.
Interesting.
So I'm curious, did you meet your wife, Matt, on the trail?
I did meet my wife on the trail.
So you were pink blazing.
I was actually yellow blazing more.
Okay.
Shades of pink.
Yeah.
You were making it subtle. It was a little subtler than usual.
No, so I met my wife using Tinder because we got into a habit in 2019. We got into a habit of using Tinder to accommodate or facilitate nights off trail. If you're going through a town and you need a bed to stay in, you'd use Tinder. And a lot of times there was a person
hold on. You're going to have to go into detail with this one, buddy. No. You're not letting this one slide.
Listen, there was no expectations. But so it was kind of, there was in these trail towns, there was an unspoken agreement in Tinder sometimes where they would connect and just offer a bed to stay in, or, laundry, or just a, a night off trail. And
I can't imagine that, like, there wouldn't be a horde of people that are just like, let me hook up with a smelly thru hiker for the night, or, obviously no strings attached or no promises, but that's awesome.
Mike, there are some really creepy people out there. You'd be surprised. Oh.
There's also Maine.
Yeah, that's true. So you were hiking. So your wife wasn't on trails? She was just in a trail town?
Yeah, no, we live in Randolph, Vermont, which is like dead center Vermont. Yeah. And I met her. I had this was way up north. This was just walking into New Hampshire. I was camping just outside of Dartmouth, and we matched on Tinder, and she picked me up the next day in Lyme.
Oh, okay. Cool. And did she get back on trail with you, or was it just you guys connected?
We connected, and then I had a cush hike for the rest of the hike. She would pick me up every weekend. So I would hike 5 days. I was a banker hiker. I would hike 9 to 5, 5 days a week. And then she would pick me up, and I'd come to Vermont and do Vermont-y things for the weekend. And then she'd drop me back off on trail on Monday morning.
Oh, so that's the connection to Vermont then. So, all right. So then if I understand this correctly, you basically, you just put a call out on Tinder. I don't understand. I'm an old guy. I don't understand all this shit, but it works. And then you guys make enough of a connection where you become a banker hiker, and she's just picking you up on the weekends, and you're doing your thing.
Yeah. So her version of the story. Her version of the story will be, she picked me up, and we connected, and we both realized early on that, we had this connection and everything. And, I mean, all that's absolutely true. Don't get me wrong. It's just, my version's a lot more simple than that, but either way. So yeah, she picked me up. I spent 3 nights with her the first time, 3 unplanned zeros. And she talked me into getting back on trail when her bed was really comfortable. And I think her exact quote was, "I'm not the person you think you want in your life if I let you not go back on trail right now." Yeah. So then, she pushes me back on trail, and I get back on in Lyme, New Hampshire, and walk up to Grafton Notch, I believe. Mm-hmm. And she picks me up again at Grafton Notch, and I spend the weekend there. I think that was 4th of July. And another 3 days. Yeah, I get back on Monday. She picks me up on Friday night. I get back on Monday morning. And then, where else did she pick me up? She picked me up at Rattle River.
Okay.
Shout out to Rattle River. She picked me up at, she hiked Katahdin with me too. She summited Katahdin.
So she finished with you. So that's interesting. And then before that, you connected with your trail family in the Smokies. As you're making your way through the Smokies and you make your way through Virginia in that area, were there any moments where, I think from my understanding, I've talked to a few people, I feel like Virginia, a lot of times, like that state becomes like, at some point, that's where the doubts start to creep in, and that's where sort of, you get into either a routine and you start questioning, am I going to stay on trail, or am I going to make it? Did you have that moment at any point where you were like, all right, I pushed through the low points and I know I'm going to make it to Katahdin?
I mean, that point really only happened for me once I got through the whites. I mean, everything leading up to the whites was just preparing for the whites. But, Virginia, they talk about the Virginia blues a lot. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really experience the Virginia blues in the way that other people do. And I think that a lot of people just make the mistake of expecting Virginia to end at some point, and it just never ends. Virginia, You're walking through Virginia for weeks or for months. And if you just accept that you're in Virginia for the rest of your life, then you never get the blues.
Yeah, that's true. And what was your weight situation on the trail? Had you lost weight, or were you still heavy at that point?
Oh no, I'd lost weight. That was part of my journey. Was after I lost weight and got excited and stoked on walking and doing all that stuff. That's when I decided to hike the trail, and so I was at my lowest weight 3 or 4 months before hiking the Appalachian Trail. And then I ate Ben and Jerry's every single night to prepare for the Appalachian Trail.
You fatten up a little bit so you have reserves, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I was down to like 12% body fat. So I had to beef it up a little bit, and then so I got halfway through and I was really thin again. And then right after I met my now wife and started getting that Kush hike, that's when I started gaining weight on the trail again.
The Kush hike.
Nice. And then how many miles a day were you doing?
25 on average.
You were. So you were cranking miles then.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm long. I'm 6'2". So
did that match your trail family? Were you able to find enough people that were cranking miles like that would fit you?
Yeah, so my trail family was a small group of me and one other hiker, and then whatever suckers we got to hang on for a couple states with us. They called us the Blacktop Boys. Okay. And that other hiker, his name is Boo Boo Boy. If he is listening, hit me up, Boo Boo Boy. I miss you, buddy.
And then your name was your trail name was Pawsey, right?
Pawsey, yes, absolutely.
What is that? What's the origin of that?
Oh, I'll get into that in a second. But Boo Boo Boy is he was a PCT hiker headed into the AT, so he was able to burn the big miles just like me, and I was just I picked up trail running before hiking the AT, so I was just, my legs were ready for it. But so Pawsey, my trail name, this was night one on the Appalachian Trail. I was in in a hostel with an older guy who had just taken a day or two off because it was raining, cold, whatever, his name was Boots, and we're talking, and he's asking me a lot of questions about my life, asking me like what I've been through, all this kind of stuff, as like the older generation tends to do when they, there's a conceivably younger person in front of them. Yeah. And at some point he says, man, you've been through a lot of like really tough things in your life, but you managed to stay positive, talked about, my upbringing, I don't know if I ever told you guys this or if I ever told anybody on TikTok that I'm a convicted felon. The story that led to that, and like cutting off my fingers, all that stuff. And he's like, you managed to stay positive, and that should be your trail name. So he tried to call me positive. And I grew up in like punk rock, East Coast punk rock, East Coast hardcore, where we call it like Pawseycore, and then, like stay Pawsey, stay positive, that kind of stuff. So It just naturally stuck. I actually have PMA tattooed on my hand, positive mental attitude. So, Pawsey just kind of worked for me, and I really fit into the role anyway. On trail, I was up every morning. It's like, come on, guys, we get to hike 20 miles today.
So you were that annoying guy in the morning, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I still am. My wife is not a morning person.
I thought it was like an automotive reference. Pawsey. Yeah, Pawsey differential.
Yeah, it's been said for that too, because I go uphill really fast. But my wife wants me to go for trail runs in the morning before we hike together, because I just have so much energy in the morning.
Oh, nice. So I wanted to just fire off a couple of sort of just rapid fire questions. So some of these you already touched on, but how much money did you spend, do you think, on the thru hike?
So this is actually a really fun part of this story too. So when I cut my fingers off, I spent all of my money on hospital bills and all that kind of stuff. And I had a pretty decent Instagram following. Some of my Instagram followers reached out to me and said, hey, if you start a GoFundMe, we'll support you. So I ended up starting a GoFundMe, but my Appalachian Trail hike was not going to happen. And I started that GoFundMe, and people donated. So the great thing about that was I was actually able to keep track of how much money I spent on trail, because it was all the money that was donated. And it was it was just over $7,000.
Oh, wow. Wow. So You got that much. Wow. That's crazy.
Interesting.
Wow. So $7,000, but that's about what I hear people say is on average. I think I've seen, and I don't know if it's like the Trek or somebody, they do like a questionnaire, and I think it seems like 5,000 to 7,000 is about average. So I don't know if that's changed. They
say you should plan for about $2 per mile, and that comes out for the AT to be somewhere in the $6,000 range.
Got it. And then what about your footwear? Were you using boots or trail runners?
Trail runners all day, only trail runners. Yeah, I went through 4.5 pair of trail runners actually.
What brand?
I am not one of those name brand hikers. I went with Asics. I think Asic Gel Venture 6s.
Nice.
I didn't really go after the big like name brand trail running shoes.
Gotcha.
Cool. What was your least favorite state?
That's a hard one to answer. My least favorite state, man. If I had to pick a least favorite state, I would probably have to say Tennessee, because and I might be wrong. I might have this backwards, but I'm pretty sure it was Tennessee are the shelters without privies in the Smokies.
Okay.
So you got to grab a tree.
Yeah. Interesting. And then now this is a New England, mostly a New England focused podcast. I think we get listeners from all over, but I don't know if people understand some of the highlights of the AT outside of like the whites, and I know like there's that place where the horse, the baby horses lick your ass, and when you go up there, and then there's the McAfee Knob and all that stuff. Like, what are some of the like cool, amazing highlights that if there's a couple of them you could highlight on the AT that are not New England based?
Well, I definitely had the Grayson Highlands on my list with the ponies that lick your ass. So. McAfee Knob was another beautiful one. I also all of Pennsylvania. If anybody is ever looking for just a wonderful place to hike and they have access to Pennsylvania, go, even if it's not Appalachian Trail. If you want to do Old Loggers Path or anything, Lehigh, I think there's Lehigh Valley Trail, something like that. Pennsylvania is just beautiful, beautiful hiking. Your elevation gains aren't too aggressive, so you don't have to have super strong hiker capabilities to do it. The only time that you really need legs is coming in and out of town on the AT in Pennsylvania.
Interesting. Yeah, I heard nothing but bad things about Pennsylvania. Everyone says, "Oh, it's the rocks and all this stuff." Yeah. So that's good to hear that somebody's got some positive stuff to say about Pennsylvania.
Yeah, they complain about the rocks, but I mean, they're coming, so you just look down. I mean, if you've hiked that far on the Appalachian Trail, you're used to looking down anyway.
It can't be worse than New Hampshire and Maine. I mean, you got rocks going uphill.
Right, exactly. You get rocks and roots all over, especially northern New Hampshire and Maine. It's usually rocks and roots every other step.
Yeah, exactly. Any injuries?
Oh, yeah. Grafton Notch. I just got dropped off. I hiked out of Grafton Notch. I get to the top of the first climb. I forget what mountain that is out there. But I get to the top of that first climb, and I'm hiking down towards the shelter and roll my ankle to the size of like a grapefruit. Like it was bad. At that point in the Appalachian Trail, you've rolled your ankle a million times, like it's got to be really bad to put you down. And I ended up hobbling to this little stream just to put my ankle in the stream and setting up camp there. But a really fun thing happened that night though. As I'm camping there, there's these footsteps that come up. Guy comes, camp, says, "Hey, I'm gonna wait for my wife here." I'm like, "Yeah, cool, that's fine, not a big deal." Start talking to him, find out his wife is somebody who I started the trail with, months ago, and he is just returning from the CDT to slack pack her through Maine, and ends up slack packing me for 2 days so I can heal my ankle.
Oh, perfect timing.
Yeah, trail provides. I mean, every time you need something on trail, it provides.
Wow, that's crazy. So eventually, you make it through. You get to Katahdin. Your future wife hikes with you. Can you talk a little bit about, like, as you're approaching Katahdin and when you finish, was the dread creeping in about like what's next for me?
Not as I finished. I was a bartender at that point. So I actually I had a job lined up through my wife, my then girlfriend. I had a job lined up from her starting at a local bar in town that just opened up. And so I didn't have too much to worry about in that aspect in terms of like expecting to try to transition back into real life.
Yeah, it sounds like you eased into it a little bit because you got like a glimpse of what life was gonna. So you basically decided I'm gonna settle in Vermont. So you had a view of what that world was gonna look like over the course of a few weekends as she was taking you back and forth.
Yeah, I also changed my whole life. I mean, I wasn't even expecting to live in Vermont after the trail.
Yeah.
Straight up moved out.
Yeah, and eventually, so you did transition into sort of regular life, right?
Yeah, begrudgingly so. I picked up drinking again. As I was bartending, I started drinking again, and used that as a way to cope with getting back into, real life. Like I said, I didn't have a problem with the expectation, but then the reality struck afterwards, and really became a problem with, trying to live a life where I could balance being outdoors and backpacking and trying to earn money to be able to do those things.
Got it. Yeah, and one of the things on your TikTok channel that comes up a lot is your journey, and probably one of the most viral videos I think you made, which must have had like millions of views, is sort of your work journey. So you were a bartender. It sounds like at some point you set that aside and said, from a lifestyle change, I got to switch it up. And then you were working in like a retail job. As far as I could tell, you were doing like overnight at a retail establishment, right? And you were basically on a team of people that was responsible for setting up the store overnight and making sure that everything was stocked and ready to go. And how long did you have that job for?
I was the overnight night crew chief for a grocery store, a local grocery store. Well, it's a national chain, but either way, I was there for 9 months. I started days and immediately found a need to fill working overnight and got moved to that position. And I mean, they took care of me. They gave me money for it and everything, but it wasn't long after taking that job over that they started to abuse, not really me. Like, they took care of me. They enjoyed me. I knew my job well, and I was confident enough in my skills, but I watched them abuse the guys under me, the guys that worked for me. And I watched them chase off 3 or 4 solid workers and people who I considered friends and people who were really good. And at some point I just had enough with the poor treatment of, my coworkers. And, just because it's not happening to me doesn't mean that I can't stand up for it. You know what I mean? So
yeah. And the thing that's so striking to me, and sort of my other job besides doing this dumb podcast with Stomp, is around sort of employment engagement and making sure that people are hired and all this stuff. So if your experience, as I followed it through TikTok, was almost like a microcosm of what I think has gone on with employment through COVID, because you sort of started off as like thankful to have a job, and you were, doing your thing, coming in. Maybe they appreciated you, maybe they didn't, but it felt like watching you that over time, like it just became more and more like, you should be grateful for working here, and you just need to do whatever you're told, and we're just going to keep shitting all over you. And, as we've seen with COVID, like, I think the attitude around like a job has changed significantly, and people are really looking at it and saying like, I need to find something that is going to make me feel valuable and people are going to appreciate me. And maybe money's not the primary, but like it needs to fit into my lifestyle, and it needs to fit into my mental health needs, so that I feel like I'm, doing something that is appreciated and important. And I feel like that's sort of like, at some point you switch jobs, and I don't know enough about this current job you're in, but what I picked up for your videos is that it seems like that's the place you're in at this point.
Leaving that grocery store for me was the first step in a very important part of my mental health journey. That was a step for me in kind of standing up for myself and deciding to see more worth in myself and stepping forward. And I think you're absolutely right that it was kind of representative of, the great resignation, as they're calling it right now. And the way that like a lot of people are kind of just deciding, I've had enough with this, and I've had enough of this, and I can find a way to make, ends meet and move forward, which is exactly what I did. I took a leap of faith. And there was a job opportunity for an agency that was in my town that I knew that if I could just keep my things together, I could get the job. So I just took a nosedive, like just dove headfirst into it, and turned down 3 other job offers. and just really, I want to be happy for once in my life. And this job that I took, it gave me the hours, it gave me the time off. More importantly, it gave me employers that treat me with dignity, which is something that I don't know that we're getting in retail. I don't know that we're getting it. I don't know that we were ever getting it in retail, but I think that COVID is just kind of amplifying it at this point.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, so we might as well just transition into this. So at some point you did the long trail. Did you do that with your wife?
Yes, my wife and I did the long trail together.
All right.
When we met, she had told me that she had planned to do a hike, and I was trying to dry out after, deciding that I had to quit alcohol again. This is how I actually got sober again, was the long trail. Put the booze down on day one and never touched it again. And her and I hiked together. I was planning to ask her to marry me, provided we could get through the first 10 days and get to Killington, and we did. And I proposed to her on the peak of Killington.
Awesome. And now you are, so you switched jobs, and then you pretty quickly decided that you're going to go out west and hike the Pacific Crest Trail. You're taking your wife with you, so you're both doing this together. How did you manage the discussion with your employer about that?
I have to be careful because there are HIPAA regulations at play here. The agency that I work for, it's a mental health agency. It's really important for them to take care of the mental health of their employees. So I sat them down and told them, all the things that I went through with my mental health journey and the things that I'm still learning about myself, and how backpacking and being outdoors helps me with that. And they're not very excited to have to replace me for 6 months, but they support my journey, and they're happy to help me get what I need out of that journey.
Got it.
If that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And then you're going to be out on the Pacific Crest Trail. So what is your strategy there? So you're hiking with your wife, so you have to factor that in. Like, it may not be, she might have a different hiking style than you. And, it's the long trail is one thing, but the Pacific Crest Trail is a little bit of a different scenario. So you got to think through this whole thing. It's not just about you now. And then you're also walking into a big year. Like, it's a big snow year out there. So you got to figure out what you guys are going to do coming through the Sierras. Are you just going to go northbound and hope that it works out, or are you going to bounce around?
Well, so our plan right now is to go northbound. Our plan is to start in Campo and finish in Canada. Obviously, those things change. I mean, the one thing I learned on the AT was day one, all of my plans, my itinerary went out the window. Like, things change on your hike, and you have to be able to, turn and burn. But like you said, because we're different hikers, I have my big, long legs and I hike big miles. She doesn't hike big miles. And, I'm fairly confident that at our pace, getting to Kennedy Meadows is going to take us long enough that, the snow is going to be an issue no matter what.
Well, you're either going to deal with snow or you're going to deal with water crossings.
Yes, exactly.
So take your pick.
Yeah. It's going to be dangerous. It's going to suck. But I'm at least confident that we're not going to get there so early that it's going to do all the things to us at once. But if we get there and it's too dangerous for it, I'll be fine. But if it's too dangerous for me to trust that she can get through some of those water crossings, then we're gonna flip flop and we're gonna hike south, and we're gonna hit it. We got to be versatile. You have to survive a through hike like that. You have to be able to change and adapt and change your plans and do what you have to do.
Got it. Well, it's been great talking to you. Snop, did I miss anything? You got any questions for this guy? I feel like I've been monopolizing them.
No, that's fine. I just was more curious about the TikTok social media side of it, really. So what's your most viewed video? How many views?
My most viewed video was, I call it the Piss Kink video. It's 1.9 million views.
That's interesting.
And
are you getting paid?
Yeah, it's a video. Yes.
Great.
Yes, I'm not getting paid a lot.
No, I know. I can imagine.
It's in January I made like $150.
Huh.
And that was a big kick because that was January 1st was when I first got over 10,000 followers from 9,000 to like 16,000 overnight.
Yeah. And
then it grew from there. I'm at like 20.2 now.
Yeah.
But Yeah, the social media thing, like I started social media back when I was losing weight originally. I got real big on Instagram, like I said, with the donations and stuff like that. And I lost about 180 pounds. And
That's amazing.
Yeah, I took advantage of, Instagram keto. Like back then, the exogenous ketones were big, and the keto movement was a huge thing. So everybody was following, the ketogenic, accounts and everything. So I got just under like 10,000, I think, at that point, and it never really went anywhere. And when I was on the Appalachian Trail, I feel like I ended up going dark because I decided halfway through that social media wasn't important for me anymore.
Well, that sort of segues to my next question, because there is some research out there that is showing like a correlation between depression, suicide, and kids that use internet, social media excessively, but maybe not necessarily causality. What's your take on especially with COVID, by the way, all these kids getting ripped out of their usual routine, and now they're just buried in their computers, their phones, on social media. Any comment on that at all? Especially since you're in like the mental health side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I do at work is deal directly in, the mental health of my community. And I see it every day. We see worsening conditions. We see more and more people requiring crisis intervention. And I can't quite put my finger on the cause of it, but there definitely, I feel like there definitely is a correlation, especially in the younger people, with at least the habits to, stay attached to an electronic device for sure.
Yeah. And not just younger kids, but even us older folks, it's an appendage.
I do it all the time.
Yeah.
I'm literally always on my phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am too. Like I'll be like, I'll go down like a rabbit hole on this TikTok stuff. I've gotten away from Facebook and Instagram for the most part, but I definitely like still go into TikTok, and I'll go down these different rabbit holes. But, it is a bigger issue around, the one thing I like about hiking is that it sort of inspires me to say like, oh, I want to go check this place out.
Absolutely.
But Matt, do you think you're going to do any YouTube stuff when you're on the PCT, or are you just going to stick to TikTok?
I've tried YouTube. I'm not great at YouTube. I've never gotten more than like 200 subscribers on my YouTube channel. My wife and I are going to try to do YouTube videos again on the Pacific Crest Trail, but I'm mostly putting my energy into the one that's earning me income at the moment, so TikTok.
Yeah, and I feel like you're, for whatever reason, like you've got the system down on that, and I don't know what it is. But you've got it down, so I would say keep going with it. Like the YouTube thing is so hard. Like really, like there's like, and I talked about it. Like Dixie and Darwin, they've got a lot of like. I think they've got their videos are optimized for YouTube at this point. Like Dixie, I think is much more engaging than Darwin, in my opinion. But like New Hampshire Hiker was probably the one sort of AT through hiker in the last couple of years that I've sort of been like, okay, I can follow her and be entertained most of the time. And the Braids was okay too, is the other one. But other than that, like I have not been able to stick to anybody else on YouTube when it comes to hiking.
Braids' videos that she put together after she finished the trail were actually much better than the one she did on trail. So
I'll definitely check those out. But she has the greatest Appalachian Trail meltdown video of all time. Matter of fact, I'll link it in the show notes. Like she just had the complete biggest meltdown. She's crying. She's like, I want to go home. This sucks. I'm miserable.
Oh, yeah.
It was like the greatest thing ever. Like I'm sure she looks back at it and laughs, but I'll put that in the show notes with the time. It's one of my favorite videos.
We've all had that meltdown. I had that meltdown on trail.
Yeah, it's good times. Awesome. So we'll be following you on the Pacific Crest Trail, and we'll look for the updates. But it was awesome for you to give us a little bit of your experience on the Appalachian Trail and talk about all kinds of different topics here. We're going to segue into the next segment, so we want you to hang out. You jump in whenever you want if you got any thoughts, and we're going to talk a little bit about White Mountain history, and then we're going to talk a little bit about snowmobile crashes.
Pretty diverse topic.
Exactly.
Let's dive into some White Mountains history, shall we?
So, Stomp, do you want to kick off segment 2 where we're going to talk about a World War II POW camp in New Hampshire? Like, what the hell is that?
That's really cool. I knew about this, but this last weekend I met with the good folks over at Reckless, and Marlena, one of the co-owners, gave me a book called Cruising New Hampshire History. And, Mike, you're into all the green signs, the historical signs all over the state. Mm-hmm. This book is a compendium of pretty much all of them. There's literally hundreds and hundreds of them. Do you have this, Mike, by any chance?
You sent me a picture of it, so I'm going to go buy it somewhere.
The author's name is...
Yeah, it's right up our alley.
It's Michael Bruno. So, I was, just in prepping for this show, I was thinking, what would be really cool is to dig into Stark a bit. Let me just read you what the sign says. Quote, in the spring of 1944, a high fence and 4 guard towers transformed a former civilian conservation corps camp on this site into New Hampshire's sole World War II prisoner of war camp. Approximately 250 German and Austrian soldiers, most captured in North Africa and Normandy, lived in the camp while working in the forest cutting pulpwood, vital to wartime industry. The camp closed in the spring of 1946 when the prisoners of war were returned to their homeland. Several maintained the new friendships they had formed with local residents. Germans and Americans attended a reunion here in 1986. Now, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Stark, but Stark is at the northern end of Unknown Pond. It's past Cabot. It's south of the Percy Peaks. It's very close to Nash Stream Forest, and it's right on the Ammonoosuc River. Mm-hmm. You have all these soldiers from North Africa that were basically conscripted, into service for the Nazi Party and the war effort. The POWs were stranded, basically. They couldn't send them to Britain. They couldn't send them anywhere. Britain was at risk of just being overwhelmed. So they took a lot of these POWs back to America by boat. I mean, it's interesting to find out that the nation had about 700 camps with about 450,000 POWs at the time.
I had no idea when you showed me this info. I had no idea that was that volume, but I think my impression is that this crew, like they kind of screen them out, and I think it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Snow, but it seems like they kind of screened the prisoners out to say, like, okay, you're a hardcore Nazi, maybe you're staying somewhere else. But like a lot of these people were just like, they were drafted,
conscripted, and
they weren't necessarily like, they were like basically not necessarily like Nazis or even supportive of the program. They just got captured, and they, maybe they were just deemed as like less threatening, right?
Yeah, here's your rifle, you're heading to North Africa. So, I mean, it's really interesting. And at the time, the government was trying to abide by the Geneva Conventions and trying to get the word out to German soldiers that we're going to treat you okay if you surrender. So there was that political dynamic in the background as well. Long story short, you have about 100 to 250, 300 POWs that arrive from Camp Devens, and they get shipped up to Stark, New Hampshire by bus, and they have to walk this long road walk up to the camp. And their job was to fill the empty workspaces for a company named, the Brown Company. The Brown Company was a logging industry that was providing wood to local businesses to, for the timber and logging and all that stuff. So they're, most of the workers that Brown Company had gone to war, or they'd moved elsewhere to Massachusetts, Connecticut for better jobs. So the POWs, against the Geneva Convention, which says you cannot put POWs to work, they bent the rules, and they got these guys working for Brown Company, and that's what they were doing. They were cutting wood at Camp Stark for pretty much 2 years, from like 1944 to 1946 when it closed. It's absolutely fascinating. The word is that they got along well. It was a fairly casual environment. No summary friggin' Nazi executions or anything by any means. What I mean? The townspeople treated them well. Some of the people still live there to this day with their families. So it's absolutely fascinating.
That is crazy.
Yeah, if you go to the spot today, you'll see the sign, And it's very simple. If you go to Stark, you cross that big metal bridge and you get that big rock cliff wall in front of you. You take a right.
Yeah, I know exactly where that is.
You drive up that road a few miles and you'll see the sign on the right. And what's left at this point is just more or less an overgrown field, but you may see some concrete foundation work. And, apparently the camp itself had guard towers and things like that. And there were actually some escapees. If you look it up on YouTube, there are videos of people that had actually dug tunnels to escape. And there's one famous escapee. This guy's name is Franz Baha. It's spelled Bacher, but it's Baha. And he was a 27-year-old Austrian who was an artist. He would draw paintings of the guards and things like that. He escaped, and he hiked 20 miles to Jefferson, and then from there somehow made it down to New York City, where he lived as a painter selling his work on the street. And there were times where he was just living on a bench in New York Central Park. He did that for about 6 months, if I recall correctly, until somebody recognized him from prior dealings, and sure enough, the guy got caught. And I think for the most part, most of the escapees felt that, it's probably better to just hang it out tough at the camp, because they were just finding themselves stuck in the brisk roughness of the whites, living on berries and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's like, I'm just going to work and make the best of it.
I wonder, so Matt, just bear with me for a minute here. So I'm wondering, Stomp is German, and I'm wondering, is he bringing this subject up because one of these guys hopped the fence in his great-grandpa Stomp? Could it be?
Is my last name Baha?
I mean,
Jamie, last name Magnuson?
Jamie Baha. That's it.
I was wondering about the Stomp Magnuson already. So
it could be.
That was just a red herring.
Yeah, well, that's crazy. So
pretty neat.
So they were there for like 3 years working for the paper mill and living up there. So do you know how many of them actually just ended up staying in the U.S.?
I'm not sure. I think it's just a handful. I mean, when you read accounts of the 1986 reunion, they make it seem like it was a minimal amount, like, perhaps a handful of guards, local townsfolk, and POWs.
Wow. Well, if these guys were in Northern Africa fighting under Rommel and those conditions, or they were in Normandy, like, they must have thought that, like, getting dropped off in the middle of the woods in New Hampshire was like heaven.
I don't know. I don't know what they would have thought at the time, but, it's not hospitable.
Unless they got dropped off in the winter.
Yeah, the winter would be crazy.
They spent a couple winters there. And it's like interesting. They had pants and clothes, tops and bottoms with PW painted on them for prisoner of war. So pretty interesting time. If anybody wants to check it out, that book is fantastic, but there's a ton of stuff online actually with actual footage of the camp and stuff like that. It's amazing. So a little bit of history from New Hampshire.
Yeah, that's very cool. So Camp Stark, and I'll load up the show notes with some pictures, some links. I'll link to that book. I'm going to go buy that book somewhere. And that's a very cool one, Stomp. When you sent this over, I was like, I had no idea. And I'm shocked that there was that many prisoners of war in the U.S. Back in World War II.
Right. Yeah, and about what was it, like 50,000 to 160,000 in New England by 1943. Amazing.
I didn't know there was any.
Yeah, it's
crazy. And
astounding.
And when you think about it, think about as we're growing up, like our big thing was like the war on terror, and then we're going over and fighting in the Middle East, and we're probably capturing some bad guys, probably like some good people mixed in there. I don't know. But like our whole philosophy around this stuff, like we used to be like, yeah, let's bring in almost 1 million people and we'll hold them in prisoner of war. Like it was like an act of God to even get one of these like people during the war on terror, like on the U.S. soil. Like they had to keep everybody in Cuba. Like it's so different, like the perspective now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's wild.
Another point on that, back to this Brown company, you forget that during the war effort, companies had quotas that they had to meet. People forget how intense it was back then. There was such a need for just industrial product to supply the war effort. Like this Brown company was like, holy shit, we got to get people to help us to meet our quota. It's like, Whole different world, man.
Yeah, like there's no way that they would hold my job if I was going to hike the PCT. No way.
Yeah.
That the Brown company's going to do that.
Yeah, it actually reminds me, like in the recent COVID days, I think there was, I forget the term, but the presidential term where the government takes over industry. What's the term for that? Because they did that with COVID as well for production.
Know. Yeah, that's right. They had there was like a law or something. I know what you're talking about. I'll look it up and try to find that.
Yeah, it's just an interesting topic. Yeah, but
yeah,
cool.
All right. Well, are we any more questions on this, or we want to move on to recent search and rescue news?
Let's move on to the crashes and all that other good stuff.
All right, yeah. So make sure you get your audio drops. You got to get some car crashes or whatever. But actually, Matt, I forgot to ask you, like, did you have any close calls? Did you ever have to call 911 and I need a rescue?
No. Thankfully, I have never actually needed a rescue myself. I've been... the last time I did the Pemi Loop, I walked up on a guy who was bleeding from his head, and I hung out with him until his friends showed up and assured me they were going to be with him until rescue showed up. But that's the closest I've gotten.
Oh, thank God we would have had to cancel the show if you had gotten a rescue. We wouldn't be able to let you on.
That's funny.
No, that's good. So, there's weird stuff happens in the Pemi Loop.
Yeah, I feel like the Pemi Loop is something that people just kind of jump into, and it's pretty hard.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right. So Stump, we're going to start with 2 hiker stories, and then we'll get into the snowmobile crashes.
Yeah.
So the first one is up in Maine. So it is, this is a headline you never want to see. It's a double whammy. So poor planning and poor decisions is the headline. Hikers rescued from Spalding Mountain. So game warden said 2 New York men, one guy was 36, the other was 70, weren't ready for a hike in Maine in winter. So game wardens rescued these 2 New York men from Spalding Mountain on Tuesday, saying the hikers weren't prepared for winter conditions in northwest Maine. So 36 and 70-year-old guys from New York, they were on the mountain early Tuesday night, and Maine Warden Service said in a news release put out on Wednesday they had to rescue them. So the 2 set out at 8 a.m. on Tuesday, planning a 15-mile portion of the AT, including Mount Abram, Spalding Mountain, and Sugarloaf. The Warden Service said the pier was slowed by deep snow and had made it only about halfway through their intended hike when the sun set. The guys found shelter at Spalding Mountain Lean-To, but they lacked food, water, and proper equipment. So there was only 3 things missing: food, water, and proper equipment. But other than that, they were good. Yeah, exactly. So I guess the temperatures dropped to the single digits, and around 5:45 they called 911. Luckily, they had cell connection, and the game wardens advised them to stay at the lean-to and start a fire. 3 game wardens went up on the mountain on a snowmobile. They were able to get within about a mile to reach them. That's something we didn't talk about. Stomp was game wardens using snowmobiles to get to hiking rescues, but the wardens determined
there's some of the best riders out there.
Yeah, exactly. So they were able to hike them out to the snowmobiles. They all had snowshoes, so that's one thing they did have. And then they got down on the mountain on snowmobiles, arriving at the base around 1 a.m. All right. So the quote here from Game Warden Kyle Leodek is, poor planning coupled with poor decisions stranded these hikers in a very dangerous condition. They were very fortunate we were able to get to them quickly. So they weren't happy. So I did a little digging on this one, Stomp. These 2 guys, I guess one of them at least, maybe 2 of them, they were doing like the New England Winter 111 or 115 or whatever it is. And they're pretty active on social media, and so they're experienced hikers. They should know better, I think. But one of these guys also had a rescue on Falling Waters. Like in 2018, he had to get rescued on Falling Waters.
Okay. What happened then? Do you know?
I don't know the details. Somebody had posted it on the Facebook group and said that this guy had a rescue report. I think he twisted an ankle or something, or it got dark and he had I don't really remember what the details are, but he's a 2-time rescue guy.
Wow. A twofer.
All right. So the next one is next one's a quick one here. The headline is, this is in the Adirondacks: hiker stumbles across body in the Adirondack Mountains.
Wow.
All right. So I do a lot of stuff in the mountains, but stumbling, I mean, occasionally, but I definitely would never stumble across a body. I would probably run away from it.
Oops, sorry. Didn't see you.
Yeah. Ooh, I just tripped over you. Sorry. But this guy was hiking in Lake George, New York, and he found this body at the base of Shelving Rock Falls, which is a waterfall. So looks like the guy died after a fall. He was on a waterfall, and he had to be lowered from where he was discovered about a third of the way up. So they're still investigating what happened there, but it was a 55-year-old guy fell down a waterfall. So I don't know. I remember we had one of those when, was it last year or the year before, somebody fell down at Arethusa Falls?
Oh, yeah. Well, there was a suicide. Well, not a suicide, but there was like a person that they ran ahead of their family
Reckless.
and then they found him at the base. So nobody knows if he slipped or jumped on purpose.
Wow.
Yeah.
I almost went down the fall. What's the one headed into Grafton Notch as you're coming down into Grafton Notch there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I don't know what that is, but like
right
that's crazy.
Yeah, I did that. I did that in complete darkness and slipped onto that waterfall there and almost went over the edge.
Oh, yeah. That's sort of like, that fall looks like it could. So this is Grafton Notch. Like there's a fall that just goes down, and it almost looks like you could Goonies that thing and go down and survive, but like I don't think you could.
Goonies.
I almost accidentally did it.
Yeah,
Great reference.
It looks like you could send it, but I don't think you want to send it if it's running hot. Anyway.
Oh, God.
All right, Stomp. So are you ready? We've got 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We may not get to these all.
Just
we have 10.
skim them because they're all the same.
I'm going to skim them.
It's just unbelievable.
I'm going to skim them.
Yeah, we mentioned this like a week ago. Just the fact that fishing game is so busy right now, not necessarily on hiking trails, but with just snowmobiles. And this is something that they do quite a bit. And, you know, the listeners should be aware of this because it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it's crazy, the volume here. So I am going to, I'll stop banging through these. So this first one's Chatham, New Hampshire, 52-year-old person from Pelham. So Chatham is over by like Freiburg in that area there. That's my in-laws' neck of the woods. So left-hand turn through an open gate on trail, and this guy took a wide turn and hit the gate. It was an open gate, but he hit the side of it, and he had a leg injury. So that's one.
Yep.
That's over by Freiburg, but on the New Hampshire side. So I think that's over by that's got to be like by Evans Notch in that area.
Gates
there.
are a huge problem, especially bridges too, like those small bridges. Those posts on left and right, you got to watch out for those.
I got a story about that we'll cover in a minute too. My one and only time snowmobiling. So I got another one here. So second one is a crash occurred by quarter 19. That's one thing I noticed on these things, that they call them corridors.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's just like a grid system.
It is, yep. Like 11 is Jefferson Notch all the way up to Wambeck. You know, so they're all numbered and labeled, and they're maps specific for snowmo.
Got it. So this next one here, so 9 a.m, so she must have just got out there, 29-year-old from Warwick, Rhode Island, and she had a passenger with her. They had been riding. They failed to make a right-hand turn, went over a steep bank and rolled it. So as a result, the snowmobile sustained significant damage, and they had serious but non-life-threatening injury. Oh, she did, and then there was a youth passenger that was not injured. So on the same day, a second accident occurred on quarter 12, which is Berlin. And this was a 62-year-old dude from Fitchburg, Mass., and he was ejected from the snowmobile when he struck an exposed rock on the trail, causing the snowmobile to tilt. So he must have been ripping, hit the rock, tilted, overcorrected, and went flying. So they called 911, and they got an ambulance out there, and they took him to Androscoggin Valley Hospital.
Yeah.
The third one of the day was on Primary Trail 127. This is in Stewartson, New Hampshire. I don't really know where that is. 62-year-old dude, another 62-year-old dude from Nashua, drove off trail and hit a tree. So I guess he got too close to the edge of the trail, and his ski got pulled into the soft snow.
That happens.
I don't really know. I guess it does.
Yeah,
Okay.
it can happen.
Yeah, so non-life-threatening injuries, and Colebrook Fire Department was on the stick on that one. Alcohol and drugs were not a factor in any of these trails. Inexperience and inattention appeared to be the primary contributing factor to all
Bingo.
three.
And that happened on one of my tours, actually. I had a wonderful family with their 2 children. So they had 2 double sleds. And the woman, we're going up over Mitten Mountain, which is east of Mount Martha in Owl's Head. And she just, it's a windy trail uphill. And she just gazed off to the right to look at the sun and boom, just went right off trail. Inattention. But inexperience is huge too. If you don't know how to turn these things, there's a learning curve for sure.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so I'm going to bang out 3 more here. So we've got on January 22nd, we've got 43-year-old gentleman from Sandborton, New Hampshire, was operating in Bethlehem, New Hampshire, when he lost control of the machine and struck a telephone pole. What is a telephone pole doing in the middle of the woods? What is happening?
Well, think of this. You know where Lowe's is? Lowe's store in Appalachia. Yeah. There's that gigantic railroad bed that runs for like 20 miles east to west. Yeah. There's plenty of those all over the place. So that's what they're talking about. So there's high tension wires, there's poles, all kinds of stuff. So this.
Yeah, that's true because I've like hiked that loop where you go from like Castle Ridge over to Lowe's, and you're right. That's all nothing but high tension.
Right, wires. And right now it is a racetrack.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. So this guy ate it. He ended up getting transferred to Dartmouth Hitchcock. So he sustained serious injuries, which is not good. Next one here is 32-year-old Deerfield, New Hampshire, operating a snowmobile south on Primary Trail 345 when he stated he made a sudden maneuver by avoiding striking a dog on the trail. So not his fault, but doing so caused him to lose control of the snowmobile, at which time he was thrown from the machine and hit a tree. So non-life-threatening injuries. He had to go to Franklin Regional Hospital.
Yeah.
So... next one, another 62-year-old female operator from, West Roxbury, Mass. She had a rental snowmobile. She lost control of the machine and ended up crashing. Witness statements and evidence at the scene indicated that inattention and not excessive speed was the primary contributing factor.
There you go.
So I don't know what that means, but maybe she was texting.
Yeah.
Let me see here, Stomp. I got a few more.
Make sure we cover that fatality.
Yeah, I got that one coming up for the end. It's too bad, but here's another one. 49-year-old from South Kingston, Rhode Island. A couple of Rhode Island people. 49-year-old female took a turn while operating a snowmobile that she and her husband had rented. Shortly after taking control of the machine, she accidentally hit the throttle while making a turn, causing her to lose control of the machine and strike a tree. There's so many trees out there. Yeah, exactly. She was thrown from the machine during the crash, striking a tree with her body as well. So following the crash, she was discovered by other members of her party, and she was given a ride back to her rental cabin. Once at the cabin, her pain got too much, and they had to call for help. And she was taken to an ambulance to Upper Connecticut Valley Hospital in Colebrook. So subsequent investigation of the crash revealed that operator inexperience was a major contributing factor. She's wearing the proper equipment, and they were all cooperative with the investigation. And then I think this is the second to last one. So Trail 112, 32-year-old dude from Danville, New Hampshire, which is pretty much Massachusetts, and a riding partner were traveling west. Riding with a second group of 2, traveling into a right-hand turn. They failed to negotiate the turn and entered the left-hand side of the trail when they hit. What do you think happened when they went over the left side of the trail? They hit another snowmobile coming the other direction.
See, that's the worst case scenario. Absolutely worst case scenario. That magnifies your potential for injury like 100 times.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's bad news.
Yeah, dude, this was a bad one. So guy was ejected from the snowmobile, which caused his body to slam into the other machine. Helmet came off, the whole deal. They called 911, and they ended up pulling him out in a helicopter with Dart.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sure
brutal.
is.
Yeah, brutal situation there. And then the last one was actually a fatality that happened on last Friday. So this is up in Pittsburgh, New Hampshire. Gentleman from Mansfield, Mass. I don't have the age. Was operating on corridor Trail 20 when he lost control, struck a tree on the side of the trail, and had significant injuries. And unfortunately, he was riding with somebody else. They turned around. Another witness came across and called 911. The police responded to the scene, and he was transported to the hospital, but he was later pronounced dead. So it's serious business with these snowmobiles.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, experience is a key to riding these things. And if you're not experienced, then you should really go with somebody that knows what the hell they're doing, just to educate you and bring you out onto the trails that are reasonable. It's just like anything else, you know. Even getting used to the mechanism of the machines, the throttle, the brake, everything else. You know, so much goes wrong, as you can see here. I mean, Jesus, it's been like 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's crazy. And this is all like within the last 2 weeks. This is like 10 or 12 accidents that have happened. And, you know, my one experience with snowmobile, I talked about this a little bit last week, but I didn't get into the details, but it was me and two friends. We went up to the Forks, rented machines in our mid-20s. Everybody thinks that they're like a, you know, Dale Earnhardt. And I was a little bit more cautious, but my two buddies, you know, they go out on the frozen lake, they come back, they're ripping down this trail, and one of them hit one of these bridges. You know those bridges where they got the two, you know, they have it's the slats going this way, and then the two things for the tires for the truck to go across.
Oh,
but if you get in the middle.
Yeah.
So he hit that thing going like 60 miles an hour, and one side of the ski hit where the wheels go for the truck, the other went into the slats, so he's going like sideways and then right off the trail, and you know the machine flips over, he's knocked out, my other friend's right up his ass, and then I'm like a half a mile behind. I come rolling up, and like one snowmobile's in the woods, one of my buddies is knocked out, the other buddy's like trying to get him to get back to like sanity. He probably had a concussion or whatever. Finally he woke up, but the machine, we had to turn that over. He was able to get it started again, but it was wrecked, and it just sucked. It was like so don't be.
Was that a rental, did you say?
It was rental, boy. Yeah. He probably it probably cost him $10 grand.
Yeah, you own that thing if you crash it. They're brutal with that. Amazing.
I'm just going to stick to snowshoes. It scared me away from snow machines.
That's it. Although the longer you're in Vermont, though, the more likely it is you're going to be on one of those machines. So you just got to play it safe.
I was just going to say, I think I'm going to take your advice and go with a guide my first time for sure.
Yeah. But it's an interesting thing. It's like the weekends are so busy that there's almost, I don't know, there's so many people on the trail that there's less of the high speeders, but there are some out there. So paradoxically, midweek can actually be more dangerous because some of the high speed, more talented people out there are zipping, they're ripping it. And if you're out there, it can be a really dangerous time, actually. Less people on trail, but like, it's very interesting culture.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to getting back to the hiking rescues. I feel like the stakes are a lot higher when you're in the snowmobile. Like the room for error is a lot smaller on those things.
Yeah.
So, but that's it, man. We did it, Matt. You made it through. What do you think?
That was rough.
You did fine.
No,
man.
I thought it was good. It's a little bit of a different, like it's the long form versus like what you're used to doing, like the 1-2 minute videos. Yeah. It just takes a little bit of you got to let yourself get into the discussion and in the moment, and not worry about like what it's going to come out like.
Yeah. I realize that now.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to learn more about the topics covered on today's show, please check out the show notes and safety information on SLASRpodcast.com. That's SLASR podcast.com. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. We hope you'll join us next week for another great show. Until next time, on behalf of Mike and Stomp, get out there and crush some peaks.
covered in scratches, blisters, and bug bites. Crest staff wanted to complete his most challenging day hike ever.
Fish and Game officers say the hiker from Florida activated an emergency beacon yesterday morning. He was hiking along the Appalachian Trail when the weather started to get worse. Officials say the snow was piled up to 3 feet in some spots, and there was a wind chill of -1 degree.
And there's 3 words that describe this race. Do we all know what they are? Only one hill!
Here's Lieutenant James Neeland, New Hampshire Fish and Game. Lieutenant, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
What are some of the most common mistakes you see people make when they're heading out on the trails to hike here in New Hampshire?
It seems to me the most common is being unprepared, and I think if they just simply visited hikesafe.com and got a list of the 10 essential items and had those in their packs, they probably would have no need to ever call us at all.